everybody, welcome to my review on the Monkey Island series, where I'm going to be reviewing every Monkey Island game chronologically. I am joined by my favorite YouTuber on the internet. Please welcome Hanu, the Hun Mackinnon.
Yar, walk the plank, ye scurvy dog. I'm not going to be talking in a pirate voice for the rest of the review, though.
Ladies and gentlemen, you know, Monkey Island is perhaps my all-time favorite adventure game series, and it's still running rapid to this very day in gaming. And what do you think you could say about the Monkey Island games in a nutshell?
In a nutshell, just crazy pirate-related fun.
Yeah, this is where, before we had Pirates of the Caribbean, where there's comedy mixed with pirate-themed adventure. And it's done quite better here in Monkey Island because, you know, there is absolutely no limits with the humor in Monkey Island.
Yes, and you see that in all the anachronisms and all the other stuff that just builds up this crazy world where you can have pirates, you can have supernatural things, you can have record players, you can have grog dispenser machines, whatever you like. It's a really down-to-earth series from the point of view that it has a gamer-centric, but yet at the same time a very in touch with what is currently happening sort of humor.
This adventure is quite the most colorful and yet most humorous adventure that I've seen in any video game series, and I'm surprised that they kept me entertained without having as much action in them. But let's begin with the first game of this series, all the way back in the year 1990, The Secret of Monkey Island. Now, this is a true classic. This game was originally released in what system? The DOS, Mac OS, Amiga.
I think the PCs and the Mac versions came out pretty much the same time, and it was later ported to other computer systems.
So
yeah.
what version did you first play this game?
Well, I played the first one is when they came out with the Bounty Pack collection, and it was the CD-ROM version, the 256 color version myself. So it wasn't the very, very original version, but it was about the closest I was gonna get, because the original version it was on floppy disks and it was only 16 colors, and the music probably didn't sound quite as powerful as it did with the CD-ROM remake. But it's really a testament to the sort of craftsmanship of LucasArts. Also, what's great about that game was that it opened up LucasArts' adventure games. This was the fourth adventure game that they did. They made Maniac Mansion, Zack McCracken and the Alien Mindbenders, and Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, the adventure game.
You know, this is a continuation of what LucasArts films, games, at the time, that's what LucasArts was...
called, yeah. Before they came
yeah,
to
back then it was called Lucasfilms Games, and now today it's called LucasArts. But anyway, they did it very creatively here, because it first opened up with, you know, some of the most original characters that we've seen during that time, because, you know, usually when you think of video game heroes, especially back in the 80s and early 90s, most of the time they're like these overpowering guys or happy-feel guys that's just ready to kick some ass. But here, our main character is Guybrush Threepwood, who's a major pirate wannabe, and what he really wants to be is to take down LeChuck, am I right?
Well, originally, the game starts off with his pirate trials. These 3 trials that he has to do sort of to prove he's a pirate, to fill out the basic qualifications. So, sword fighting, thievery, and treasure huntery, as they put it in the game.
The funny thing is, Guybrush has none of those experience at all.
Yes, but it begins as a basic quest to become a pirate, and then tangled into that comes this sort of romantic angle with the governor. I guess she's governess, but they call her the governor of Melee Island, Elaine, and Guybrush gets himself tangled up with LeChuck, who's this ghost pirate who's in love with Elaine, and then sees Guybrush for some reason as a rival to his affections. Well, he is, and of course there's no real affection between Elaine and LeChuck. But basically, Guybrush is an interesting character because he has really no backstory. He just shows up, and yes, he just shows up from the right of frame and walks in on the lookout, scares the crap out of him, and just says, like, "I'm Guybrush Threepwood, and I want to be a pirate." In Secret of Monkey Island, you don't have quite a colorful variety of discussion topics, but you do meet a lot of great characters who have their own little niches in the sort of piratey tradition. You know, there's the guy who stands around the street corner selling maps.
What I really like about how the game opens is that, you know, like you said, there was no backstory for Guybrush. He just rocks right in. And the look and the feel of the Scum Bar was just absolutely piratey-like. And it just feels, you know, so warm and cozy. Every corner and every area you turn, it has that warm feeling. Or especially for, you know, that, like you said, the outdated visuals that the special editions fixed. Well, on Guybrush's journey, trying to become a pirate, and he's trying to accomplish those 3 challenges, what were those 3 challenges again? I forgot.
Sword fighting, thievery, and treasure huntery.
Oh, yeah. So he had to learn them from 3 other characters who will soon be part of his crew. The Master of Swordsmanship, who was...
Carla.
Oh, yeah, Carla.
Carla. Guybrush actually learns the sword fighting from Captain Smirk, if you remember that guy.
Oh, yeah.
I think you should have caught your eye, because I always thought he bared a very notable resemblance, at least in the original version, to Arnold Schwarzenegger. At least before the game before they introduced voice acting with the special edition, you know, I always imagined him having that that Arnold Schwarzenegger voice. What do you want, maggot?
I will show you how to play sword fighting. Oh, speaking of which, I really like how LucasArts creatively handled the, you know, conversations.
Yes.
Because, you know...
Yes, because that's actually... Secret of Monkey Island was really where 2 sort of major things about LucasArts adventure games kind of came to prominence. One was that sort of non-linear puzzle solving, which is what you can do with the 3 trials, that you can do the sword fighting first if you want, but you can go look for the treasure first if you want, or you can go into the mansion and steal the idol first if you want. It's not said, it's all your limitations is just if you find the necessary items and talk to the necessary characters first, and maybe solve some minor puzzle before you get to do those. But the other thing is also just the wealth of dialogue that you can have with characters, and these stories that they tell you, these things that just add to the sort of world of Monkey Island, you know, the games themselves. And it's a great tradition that they've kept, definitely held strong in all subsequent sequels. But also they've adapted that into other LucasArts games, you know, whether you're talking about Grim Fandango or Full Throttle or any of the LucasArts adventure games, really.
Back on the insult sword fighting, you know, like we were talking about the conversation tree.
Yes.
You know, I really like how they handled to make it look like a different character will make an insult and you have to think of the best comeback afterwards. Like, for example, it's not in there, but I make up one. I never seen a bigger mama's boy. Well, at least I have a real mama.
One of my favorite. You know what? One of my favorite insults from that game actually is, "You make me want to puke. You make me think someone already did." It's so.
You know what's my favorite comeback ever, and it always guarantees to make you lose.
Yeah.
I am rubber, you are glue.
Ah, yes. The old "I am rubber, you are glue," and that's another great tradition of the series that's been kept up in subsequent sequels. And you know, insult sword fighting is still one of my favorite things about the game. I love going around. I mean, it's a bit time consuming because you have to wait for the pirates to show up and you kind of have to get in their path.
And not to mention, you don't have all the ways to say a great comeback. You have to, challenge all the other pirates in Melee Island to actually make a better comeback against the Master Swordsman or Swordswoman.
Yes, you know, that was a great surprise, the reveal that the Swordmaster was actually a woman. But thing that I always find it interesting about that is just the amount of insults, and especially the more you play the game, the more you can kind of challenge yourself in, maybe I can get by the game with an incomplete set of insults. Not always, but it's you do have to win a couple of sword fights before Carla even lets you fight. Yeah,
because guaranteed that you're going to lose a lot on your first try.
Yes, because the whole structure of the insult sword fight is sort of accumulative.
Yes. Best way to explain sword fights. And it was the sword fights was heavily inspired to previous Pirates movies before this game was released. Because when you look at any sword fight in any pirate movie, especially in modern ones like Pirates of the Caribbean, they're always insulting each other every time they're sword fighting each other. And I really like how LucasArts managed to put Secrets of Monkey Island to have that kind of feature.
But they thought it would be kind of creative and original in a way to focus entirely on the insults rather than the sword, like the wisdom that's been repeated in later Monkey Island games, which Captain Smirk put it in. If you permit it to say it in the Arnold Schwarzenegger voice, you know, sword fighting is like making love. It's not what you do, but what you say, which is important. Okay, that was terrible. I'm sorry, terrible Arnold impression.
And more than half of the game, to me, it feels like that you're stuck in Melee Island and trying to figure out how to get out there. But it kind of feels like a rewarding thing, because considering that you're trying your best to become the best pirate of all time, which is what Guybrush Threepwood really wants to do. First, he has to find the Master Swordswoman, who was, god damn it, I keep forgetting her name, Carla. Yeah. And then, you know, Guybrush has to look for the other members, like Otis. At first, it explains in the Secret of Monkey Island games, Escape of Monkey Island, that he is Hispanic. You found him in jail. You couldn't even set foot in the jail because his breath smells so bad that the entire room couldn't even handle it. Otis is definitely one of those interesting character types. It's the toxic halitosis and everything, but probably even more funny is the crime he is accused of, which is picking the flowers. And I don't know what it is with Otis and picking flowers. He insists that it's a conspiracy to make him look less threatening. But that was also interesting about, you mentioned the Hispanic interpretation, because that didn't really exist until Escape from Monkey Island. I never saw Otis as Hispanic when I played The Secret of Monkey Island. But now, I guess it's funny because, you know, the voice performance actually came later, and then they did the remake, and they got the same voice actor back, and now I can't help but think of Otis that way. All right, and the third member, oh goodness, who was it?
Meat Hook.
Oh yeah, Meat Hook.
Meat Hook. How could you forget Meat Hook?
Because, you know,
the muscular.
We were talking about that guy that reminds you of Arnold Schwarzenegger.
But yes, Meat Hook. I do have to say Meat Hook and his talking tattoo, which and his fear of parrots. Like, what is there not to love about Meat Hook? And I love the fact that you enter the scene insulting him at the very beginning, and then and the funny thing is that the best way to get along with him is to basically admit that you were a jerk, which is kind of contradicting a little bit of Guybrush's character later, but let's not get into that.
All right. And then when you got all your three members to run your ship, the story starts to begin when Elaine was kidnapped by LeChuck, and Guybrush Threepwood, as love at first sight, he really is desperate to to save her. But it's really a big challenge to accomplish getting all three of the characters on board in your crew, because, you know, for Carla, you have to learn how to, for sword fighting, and the puzzles of trying to figure out how to get to Otis, Meat Hook, is really time consuming, but it's really worthwhile. What do you think about the puzzles in general?
The puzzles in general, I think Secret of Monkey Island has a very good puzzle structure. The only thing that I always hated about it is that some of the clues to those puzzles are a little obscure. Like, for the longest time I was actually stuck because I couldn't get into the mansion, because I didn't realize that Otis picking the flowers was a clue, you know, to something, and the name of the flower is actually something I learned much later from a fan site, is that the Latin name of the flowers actually means sleeping dog, and that's the whole big clue to that. I think the puzzles are really good. There are some, again, slightly obscure ones, like when you're trying to buy the ship from Stan, and you have to know to keep haggling for the price to get it to drop so you can finally buy it. So there are some sort of cryptic parts of the game, but for the most part, it's all about having the patience to kind of look for the correct items and, you know, using your head a little bit. What do you think is, I'm thinking, the most logical solution to something like, well, some are pretty bizarre. like the rubber chicken with the pulley in the middle.
Oh yeah, I remember that one.
What possible use could that have? And then you see the then you see Hook Island in the distance, the two poles and the cable running between them. Suddenly it all makes sense.
Yeah,
in a weird way.
And now, moving on, when you finally got your crew, you realize that they're one of the most laziest and disrespectful pirated crew you will ever find in your life. All they did was sunbathe and oh my goodness, trying to find the ingredients for the map of Monkey Island, which is one of my least favorite puzzles in the entire game. was like, why did I need a crew to begin with?
That recipe puzzle is a bit of a weak spot from the point of view. It's actually, when you think about it, it is actually pretty obvious, but it's not self-explanatory how many of each item you need to throw in with the recipe. And I think that's the biggest problem, is that they should have made it perhaps a little bit more clear what the intention was, because you kind of have to interpret a lot. But then all the other random stuff, it runs into the typical adventure game problem of just trying out all the possible stuff in your inventory and throwing it in, which is what's called as clutching at straws. So yeah, you definitely run into that problem. But on the positive side, that is really the biggest puzzle in Part 2, and Part 2, of course, is a very small part of the whole game.
Yeah, to me, it was the middle of the road of the entire game, but on the third part, we're going to try our best to avoid spoiler territory, but when they finally reached to Monkey Island and met a band of cannibals in Herman Toothrupt, oh my goodness, all kinds of madness goes out everywhere, and it feels like the build-up was finally taking place. You're meeting all these monkeys, seeing some of the most challenging but yet most fun puzzles that you can find in any adventure game, and the thrill of trying to get, Lake Chuck's ghostly ship and try to stop him from marrying Elaine, the governor. It just was right on par to me.
Yes, and Monkey Island is one of the high points of the game for me. Well, not even puzzle-wise. I think I love the tropical feel of it, and the explosion of color that you get once you finally get there, because I love Melee Island for the nighttime mystique of it, but I always associate the color blue very strongly with that. I see everything is so blue on Melee Island, and then you go to Monkey Island, it's tropical and it's interesting, and you run into the cannibals who are rather reluctant to eat you for some reason, and but actually even more so, I was always very intrigued by the caves that you go into. But I love the shock value, because you do get a really creepy feeling, and yet you're in the middle of this sort of a very adventurous game. And that's another thing I like about Secret of Monkey Island, is that it doesn't have like one definitive milieu, if you will. It's comical, but then if you look at like the character mugshots, and they're sort of drawn sort of realistically, like Guybrush is, and then you have the shock element of going to what is essentially hell.
Yeah.
And it adds the variety. It just makes it feel more bigger as an adventure. Although, in hindsight, I do have to say that I spend a lot less time on Monkey Island, because the puzzles, once you figure them out, are actually rather simple.
Yeah, totally. Oh, I can't believe we forgot to tell this about it. When you look at the game, it's all pixelated, and when you see your characters far away, but when you talk to a character and the camera, the position of the game is like zooming into a specific character that you're talking to, they look completely different than what you see from the regular game, because they were actual faces, and even seeing Guybrush was like almost more realistic looking at his designs of today.
Yes, I definitely think that is an interesting and a really cool novelty factor in that game, because we see nothing like that in any of the later games, not even the second one, even though it was made only 2 years later.
Yeah, in a nutshell, this is a true classic to adventure games in general. The adventure, the humor, how clever they handled the conversation tree, how adventurous and yet thrilling the adventure was all the way from the beginning to the end, was none other than excellent.
I think, yes, definitely, because it's a game that, in my view, It's an adventure game that has not lost its charm and appeal for me. However, it is... some people may criticize it as being a little short, and that might be one of its few failing points.
Well, that depends if you're good at adventure games or not. Or if you played Monkey Island to death.
Yes, because there is a lot of extensive effort that went into the opening parts of the game. Definitely, I feel that for all it's worth, it's still one of the best adventure games I've ever played. And it's always been one of those games that I enjoy coming back to. It just has an immense amount of nostalgia for me. Yeah, it's an extremely well-crafted game.
To wrap up our review on Secret of Monkey Island, Hanu and I, just like when I was doing a co-op review with Zookstar 1000, we're going to give our own ratings to Monkey Island. My rating for The Secret of Monkey Island is a 5 fingers out of 5.
My rating for The Secret of Monkey Island is 4 fingers out of 5. The amazing graphic look, the small amount of music that, in spite of the low amount of songs, an extremely memorable soundtrack, the incredible puzzles and dialogue, and really the advances into the adventure game genre, but perhaps still with a little bit of room to improve on its size and girth.
So, since we're already done with The Secret of Monkey Island, now let's go jump to the sequel.